Okay, everybody, if you'll have your seats, those of you who are still waiting to talk to Jack, feel free to stand over there and take care of that. Most of you by now probably know Charlie and Ben. And anyway, we're glad to have you guys from Spooky Pinball. And how many of you have played America's Most Haunted already? All right. Well, we're so glad to have you guys here in Texas, and we're going to turn it over to you now, and we'll have some questions and answer time later.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing? I said y'all. Earlier today, I tried to eat a hamburger with ketchup, and I got punched in the face, and I was like, oh, yeah, not supposed to do that here in Texas. So we're learning the local customs.
Hi, I'm Charlie from the Spooky Pinball Podcast and Spooky Pinball LLC.
Chuck, what on earth made you go from a podcast to manufacturing pinball? That seems really insane.
I got really drunk and woke up one morning and I found out I had quit my job and started a pinball company.
So I was like, oh man, did I quit my job last night? I did.
That's pretty much exactly
That's you throwing up.
No, I worked in the print industry for 21 years. I was very, very happy at my old job. I'm basically a happy kind of dude. And accidentally stumbled into pinball work, so to speak. Had done a custom game, turned an old Mark Ritchie. Is he here? He threatened to punch me before.
I saw him earlier today.
We turned a Mark Ritchie Firepower 2 into a Godzilla game that my son and I did. And again, being in the print industry, that kind of made it easy for me. Anyway, I took it to the Midwest Gaming Classic several years ago, and George Gomez pulled me aside and said, how come it looks better than the Rolling Stones? And that led to some conversations and discussions. One was with this guy who was just making custom games in his shop and saying, hey, I could help you and you could help me.
Yeah, the other guy, Andrew, he was like a Ben Heck fanboy, and he was drunk, and he was like, oh my God, you're Ben Heck. Come look at the game we made.
And I literally said, who the hell is Ben Heck?
Yup. And I was like, oh, wow, this Godzilla game is really cool. I was really impressed with how you had made it with the direct print process. And I was like, I should be friends with this guy because he can do things.
And yeah, so that's how the whole basically he put a soundboard that allowed us to have speech and music in a game that had none.
Yeah.
And I printed the Lost playfield.
Yeah.
Which got lost.
Well, it didn't get lost. So we then after we did the Bill Paxton game, for some reason we wanted to make a fan game based off Lost. Just one. We weren't going to sell it. We just wanted to do it. And
is that important to tell people?
Yeah, and it didn't shoot very well. So we put it together, but I was like, this sucks. We need to design better. And we just tore it apart. And we had the nice side art of Evangeline Lilly. So, we basically scattered it to the winds because it didn't shoot very well. And
it was a piece of crap.
Yeah, it was. It was crap. It was kind of like a kidney stone or passing something. It's like, I got to get this bad game out of my system.
But it looked great.
It was beautiful. I thought we did a good job, Anyway, so around that time, I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to keep doing this, if I'm going to keep wasting my time making pinball, I need to make something that we can sell, which means like an unlicensed theme, so we don't, that we can afford to make for $0 without a license. And I was like, okay, we'd just done an episode of our Ben Heck show. The premise was we did a Halloween episode about looking for ghosts, like a spoof of all the ghost hunting shows, and we called it Ghost Squad. It was really fun to film. It was like, I detect a ghost. Oh no, I hear things. All that nonsense. And we're like, okay, that was fun. What if we kind of turned this into a theme? There hadn't been like a spooky or a haunted, macabre theme in a long time. Well, Elvira, I suppose. Scared stiff?
Yes.
Not Sharky Shootout.
No. That was scary for other reasons.
Yeah, why is there an alien playing pool? Who came up with that?
Wasn't me.
Yeah. It's like, no one's going to notice there's an alien in there?
As you can tell, Ben gets sidetracked very easily.
And why would it have a white head? Okay, yeah, anyway. Okay, so then we're like, okay, we'll start developing this. And I was working on that for about a year. And that's what some of our slides are going to show you here. So I guess we can get through these slides, and then we'll get to the part where Chuck decides to start his own company and turns insane. So we started, I hate to say, so I I was working with John Papaduke on the zombie game, and that changed direction, but I did learn a lot from John. And one thing he was always like is like, oh, you got to make everything in foam core, or as they call it in the industry, Nordmanite. Yeah, Dennis Nordman would be like, oh, I'm going to make a whole game with this stuff. And so,
and does.
But the thing I did differently is that I, have my beautiful MDF. That was sarcastic. Whitewood here, and then I put foam core on top of it, so we could quickly figure out shots, hot glue them, and move them around, and stuff. So this is an early version. You can see that the elevator would dump out into a crawl space, and then the ball would cross over and go to the left side. That we removed that when we simplified the elevator. Next slide, please. Here's a close-up of something that I thought was important to film. Oh, see how the psychic shot was a psychic hand? Like, yeah. But then we're like, let's just put a target there. Cheaper. We costed it out of the game.
I costed it out of the game.
Next slide, please. This was we prototyped all of the ramps in wood and plastic using a laser. I have a laser cutter. And they're pretty close to their final form. And doing it in plastic is a lot faster, although obviously they're metal in the production game. Next slide, please. This is the bird's eye view of the infamous jump that, looking back now, we shouldn't have done, but we did. I don't know. I just thought it'd be kind of cool, but it's really hard to make something that you can fail at that's also consistent. So whatever, lesson learned.
I can tell you flat out, the hardest part of building America's Most Haunted is getting that jump ramp lined up perfectly. When it's right, it's very cool. But yeah, we spend more time on that than basically any other part of the game. It has to be absolutely perfect.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
How much, when you're on your deathbed, you can be like, I spent all that time on the ramp. Blah. And the doctor's gonna run in, we just discovered the cure for whatever you died of. Like a Twilight Zone episode?
And then it turns out it's a cookbook.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So early on, we were trying to figure out what feature to put where the ghost is now. And actually, some more advice from Mr. Papaduke was, everyone's right-handed, so you push the right flipper button, which means the ball goes to the upper left. So always put the big toe in the upper left. That's my John impression.
You didn't do that in your John voice.
I sort of did.
Where's Brian Kelly? Can he be our John Papaduke translator?
No, he's back there being drunk or something, or riding around in a van with pictures of puppies. So originally, we were trying to figure out what to put there, and originally we had like the EMF pump, which is this spinning thing, and you can also see this is where we started using 3D printers. Next slide, please. And we still have our stupid EMF pump, but you can see everything is basically there. There's a captive ball instead of a target, which we costed out. Oh, there's a VUK near the word library. We removed that. A lot of it was making it simpler. It wasn't just to save money, although we did. It just, there's a certain point you just have to stop putting things in the game and just get it done.
Well, a lot of it, the captive ball was actually given up a little bit earlier on, but you wound up widening out that shot due to some suggestions from a legend.
Yeah, Steve Ritchie. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the elevator. Oh, RE, the shot. So we had it at MGC 2013, which was about 2 years ago, and Steve Ritchie was playing it, and I walked in the room and I was like, oh, it's Steve Ritchie playing my game. I don't want to say nervous, but I kind of felt like I should be nervous, right?
I was scared to death.
Well, you know me, I have no emotion left, so I didn't care. But he's like, I got a few suggestions. He's like, you got to make that shot wider, so put a narrow target there and make the ghost loop out of metal.
That was it?
Yeah. And so this is the elevator. Originally, you're going to be able to, the ball could go into the back of the elevator as well as the top, so you could load it from the left orbit or by shooting directly into it. But as time progressed, we simplified it. Next slide, please. But yeah, we made it out of acrylic just to quickly prototype it with the laser. It worked, but it wasn't consistent enough. So the one that's in the game right now, where it's kind of a scoop thing, that was our simplified, works every time, dumb version. It's still a cool feature. So it just goes to show you could really overly complicate something, and you don't really need to. You can simplify it greatly, and people will still appreciate it. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, so the elevator was going to dump into the crawl space, so you could shoot the left orbit, the ball would go into the elevator, then lift up and then drop into the crawl space, or if you shot the ramp, you would orbit over into the attic. So it was a little bit more complicated at one point in the past. Next slide, please. Yeah, originally everything was like, it was like a haunted house. Like, this is the library, this is the kitchen, and then Andrew wanted one. He was just dead set that there'd be a bathroom in it, like the haunted bathroom or something. So the middle shot originally kind of represented the library, and we kind of based the modes off that. Like, oh, there's gonna be one kind of ghost in the library and another kind of ghost in the staircase. But what we ended up doing was we kind of made it more ghost driven. So instead of the playfield representing a haunted house, it kind of represented many different locations. So like, oh, the prison's over here, the hotel's here, and whatnot. And that worked better because it allowed us to make everything driven off the personality of the ghosts. Next slide, please. So this is our early cabinet. Early on, we're like, let's put RGB strip lighting in the cabinet. How do you feel about that, Chuck?
I've come to terms with it. It's okay.
Okay, you made your peace with it?
Yeah, we handle those fairly well in the build process now. It's really not a problem.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to like just have a general illumination and color the whole playfield. Next slide, please. So, fun fact, originally America's Most Haunted, when it was called Ghost Squad, was going to be an LCD game. And I had this really terribly stupid idea. I'm like, let's film people acting out scenes, like kind of like a live action Dragon's Lair, and have that match up with the game. And we dumped it pretty early on because like, oh man, it's so much work to program a game that way. Let's not do it. Let's just make a DMD. And thank God we did, because people, we've quite discovered people do not like photographs of people on pinball machines. And live action footage of people, I think we would have spent a lot of time making something people didn't like. So bullet dodged. Next slide, please. So we prototyped the ghost of many different warts and all.
Did your 5-year-old nephew design that, or?
That is a brilliant piece of engineering. So if you look at it, he has right angle gears on his arms, and there's a static gear at the base. So when the ghost rotates, you get free motion in the arms. So the arms will go up and down like Robbie the Robot. The reason we didn't do this, it worked really well, but it would be hard to make a molded ghost that fit around the gears. So we just simplified it. But it was a one servo solution. Next slide, please. Okay, so this would probably have been in 2012, I think. If you look in the middle of the playfield, you'll see a bunch of words. Originally, it was going to have like a mist multi-ball kind of thing, where it would grab the ball and drag it across the playfield like a Ouija board, and the ball would, well, it wasn't going to be called Ouija board because Ouija is a trademark of Parker Brothers, but spirit board, and it was going to drag the ball to like an answer, and like you see how die is right above straight down the middle, so it'd be like die. But we removed that for two reasons. One, the ball moving worked, but the idea was we were going to try to catch it coming out of the scoop. And if you played that game, you know how brutal that scoop is. So imagine if you're trying to catch that ball with a magnet, it just didn't work. Also, we kind of changed the ghosts. The two ghosts that changed the most. The Warfort ghost, which was originally going to be like, we read all the ghost stories, like the ghost of a little girl that got hit by a stray bullet in the Civil War. I'm like, how do we make that interesting or funny? The answer is to get rid of it and put in like a Confederate Army ghost, that was your voice.
Yes, indeed, it was.
There's a funny story when we were recording that voice. There's like 4 people at the shop. Of course, we recorded all the lines in the shop, and the line was, "You're softer than the soft white underbelly of a possum with a soft white underbelly." And everyone started laughing after he said it. Like, so in the game itself, I think it's Dennis Norman going.
You can actually, we couldn't edit it out because it was the best take we had, and Nordman's in the background laughing as I'm softer than the and he's just
so you hear like a wheeze
it's still
at the end.
in the game.
Next slide, please. Oh, now this is another revision of the ghost. He has 3 servos, 1 to move him left and right, and then 1 per arm. And for that one, I'm like, that is way too much programming to do, so that's why I changed that. And if you look at the ghost loop, it's there, but there's 3 targets. This is before we switched to an opto. But we're, you can see we're getting closer to an idea. Next slide, please. We tried to get away with 2 pop bumpers, but we didn't get very good action. Just like Brian Kelly. Next slide, please.
This is a classy seminar. Thank you for coming. As you can tell, we take everything completely seriously.
This is our this is our first revision of the back glass. Looking back now, this probably would have gone all over better than the green one we had at Expo a couple years back. We learned a lot making this game. We were like, oh, let's put. I wanted to really convey the idea of people see the game, it's about a cheesy TV show, we're looking for ghosts. That's why we had a back glass that was all green. And I thought people would hate the fact that the back glass was green, but they hated the fact it had photos of people on it. So we learned you can't make a game with photos of people who aren't famous. So you could put Kim Kardashian or Chris Pine or whatever actor on a game, that's fine, people accept that. But when they see like just random photos of people, they think late 80s Gottlieb, like Bad Girls, or Genesis, not the group. Next slide, please. So the ghost, I sculpted him out of clay, and then I scanned him into 3D, and then shrunk him down to size. So this is like what I would call a bigature. It's about a 200% or 200% scale ghost. And there's my bottle opener and my iPad also in the shot. Next slide, please.
Great information.
Okay, so Chuck and I are like 3D printer addicts. So you have 2 now? You bought another one, right?
Yep.
I have 3. And here's something interesting. Look at the ghost. Like, see how his arms are pointed straight out? So you had to print support material under his arms for it to work. And we 3D print a lot of the toys because it's a lot cheaper than doing injection molds. So the later versions of the ghost, in the 3D file, I chopped off his arms, and then I re-extruded them up at 45 degrees. That way they could print without supports. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the first playfield that you delivered. And so I designed the playfield art. Some people don't like it, that's fine. It's not the one greatest thing ever. I think it's okay. It should have been a little brighter to help you see the ball, but whatever. It's done now, ship it. Next slide, please. There we go. So we did, so MGC 2013.
This is where I come in. And I go, Ben, these mechs exist. You don't have to make everything, but I can save $1. No.
Well, this was just trying to get it done for MGC 2013. So I'm like, oh, let's 3D print this. And look how thick I made everything. I way over-engineered it. 3D prints, they have their limits for strength, but this is ridiculous. You could drive a bus over that. What? Probably 25%. Yeah, again, I could have made it like a third, and but it lasted. That mech that you see there was in the game that I had in my shop that I programmed like for a year. That mech lasted the entire time. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is pretty much how the game ended up. The ramps are wood and plastic, which of course Chuck translated into steel, but everything's pretty much there. Although if you look on the left-hand side, you'll see the wide target by the word tech. That was a target where Steve Ritchie was like, target better. Next slide, please. Oh, I had to throw this in. This is when I first met Python Angelo, and he has the Bride of Pinball, and he gave me a lot of great advice, such as, pinball machines are like women. And I won't tell you the rest of the quote. Quite a character. I came across this photo making this. I just had to throw that in there. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about this, because this is where you kind of come in with the ramps.
Yeah, basically Ben designed everything in wood and plastic, and it looked, when you saw the stained laser cut wood, it was beautiful, but it obviously wasn't going to hold up. So when I started seriously thinking about how can we manufacture it, my job was basically to take everything that we had come up with and Ben had cut on plastic and wood and make it something that was going to be durable and not get destroyed in, a week. So I had to take apart all these little paper mock-ups, foam core, whatever we had, and put it all into CAD, which I had never done in my life. I'm an art guy. I was an illustrator in Photoshop, so I had to literally learn how to do CAD, send all these drawings, and the things I just had to learn was insanely stupid, to my buddy's metal shop to have everything translated into a mass producible form, which meant all of the 3D coil holders went right out the window. And I called Terry at Pinball Life and said, send me a real one.
And for something like this, I found some cardstock at the hobby store that was .040 thickness, the same as the steel we used. So I used my little 40-watt epilogue laser, and I would prototype all the metal parts in paper and put it together almost like a dollhouse and say, okay, this will fit, the tabs will fit, and once I knew it worked, and I actually would put the paper in the game and shoot it. Once I knew it worked, then I would give it to Chuck to translate into metal. Next slide, please. This is still kind of in the game, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's the rack and pinion for the elevator, and we use a servo. The servos have some advantages, although there are disadvantages. If I were to do it again now, I would not use servos, but whatever. Next slide, please.
They're cheap to replace, thank God.
Yeah. So another weird thing is, it was like, what? Well into the process, a friend of mine was visiting my shop, and he was like, why doesn't the ghost light up? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. So I created a copy of the model that was hollow, and then we put 2 RGB LEDs underneath him, and he lights up. And if you notice in the game, all of the lights, the mode lights for the 6 different ghosts, they all have a different color to them, and the ghost changes color to match that color. And the depictions of the ghosts on the backboard, they all have color to match that. So like the doctor ghost is green, like sickness, mucus, pus. The bar ghost is blue to make you think of Bud Light, the top selling beer. Everyone's got a color associated with them. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is back box. So we had a DMD animation of each ghost, and it was a basic PSD. This is the Brian Kelly ghost, and he's based off H.H. Holmes, the murderer from the 1893 World's Fair. And we would make like a kind of a maquette of the ghost, and then we would use After Effects to animate them. So we make them generic and then add the animation. It's easy with the ghosts because ghosts are like, you know, amorphous. It's easy to like make them blur and move their arms. And then the one on the right is the higher resolution version that we use for the back box. Next slide, please. That was the, okay, so this is our motor mech. So you can, what was it? You can buy the Target Bank, but the motor mech, like from Attack from Mars, is really expensive.
It didn't exist, so basically that was another part that I had to convert into metal and, you know, just do it upright, basically.
We did a 3D printed test first, like, okay, this is gonna work. Now let's turn it into metal. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is like Chuck and I, like, you know, working together. I was like, Chuck, we have to have animated backboard, like Parker helped us design. We have these 2 ports, we have like 8 GI banks for the back box, 8 GI banks. The playfield, I'm like, let's blink things in the back box. And Chuck's like, no. Next slide. And I was like, yeah.
That's not how it happened at all.
We could blink the orb, we could blink the sky. And there's actually some of that code left in the game, and what did you say?
What did I say?
You had the RGB, right?
Basically, it wasn't bright enough. It was a cluster. It was really more wiring and crap that we just didn't have time to do right before we took it to the Midwest Gaming Classic. So as a last resort, I'm like, we've got RGB strips. Let me try them in the back box. And Ben hesitated, agreed to, okay, but just for the weekend. By the time we got home, all anybody was, whoa, the back glass changes color. That was it, done, and it's never changed since.
Yep, and it's just tied into the same RGB in the cabinet.
It's identical, but yeah. It looks really cool.
So that was an example of like just doing something really simple and it was effective. Next slide, please. So programming games is very hard. I spent I would say programming Rickus was fun. It was like 80% of the work, at least. It was insane. I also did the dots and the sound, so that probably made it seem worse than it should have been. So I would just go through every mode. Every time we had a show, I would have everything. I would cross-reference the modes to music. You can't see it right here. You can't see the top of the spreadsheet. But I would get through all these. Spreadsheets and try to get them all to done or working, and then we knew it was working. Next slide. Okay, Chuck. I think this is your shop. So these next slides are going to involve you.
Yeah, and again, we've been pretty overwhelmed this weekend with sales and just kind words, and I can't thank you enough for that. But when I quit my job a little over 2 years ago, I basically spent the first year just doing nothing but taking Ben's game and creating drawings and sending out parts and just everything to make it mass manufacturable. But what we had no idea how to do was physically build a ton of games. we had to learn it every step of the way, and it took us about 3 months to really start refining it to the point where it was a repeatable process that made sense for everybody. And again, it was me and one other guy. Ben wasn't, he's up in Madison doing his day job, and I'm in my shop just killing myself with one employee. We're now up to like 5, which is great. And but what you see here is basically the cabinets coming in. We assemble, we decal, we do all the work, running all the wire harnesses, the coin doors, and you can kind of see it in stages. We do them 12 at a time. And the games on the end with the back glasses in are essentially in playtest mode. And then when the next batch, they get boxed up, they go to the freight dock, they're gone. We'll bring the empty cabinets and you just reverse it back across the other side of the room. It's really simple now when we look at it, but to get it all organized and going was a major pain.
Next slide.
This is our minions. This is the 2 playfield minions. They are really, really, really the backbone of our workforce, and I'm extremely lucky to have them in that shop every day, 40 hours a week plus. But they double team the playfields, while Lucas on the right there is running the wires, Josh on the left is soldering everything in place, and they've got quite a little system down. And it, like I said, it took a month or 2 to get it refined to the point where it's pretty fast. But literally, these 2 guys, and I'm sure you've all seen the videos of Stern, and you've got a whole line of people. These 2 guys can bang out an entire playfield in a day by themselves, completely unmanaged, and it's really an asset. Yeah, our kids are in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Next slide.
Again, just silly little things, wire harness rotating rack that one of my workers built on a Friday night. Lucas, I come in on a Saturday, this thing's sitting by my desk, and he's like, hey, I think I got a wire solution. And this is, each spindle is a different row or column in the lamps and switches, and you just spin the thing around and you pull it up onto a wire diagram board that Paul Beimborn back there with his hand in the air created for us. Another part of this book, and again, man, we're all just friends working together when this thing starts, and Paul was a big part of this. He stopped in my shop to pick up a translite for a charity tournament on his way to Madison, and he's like, seriously, dude, I had no idea you were even here. And like 2 weeks later, he's working, like at night, his wife's getting mad, where in the hell's Paul? She's pregnant. And he's building wiring harnesses, leave me alone, this is awesome.
Yes, a big part of Spooky's success is Paul's incredibly patient, understanding wife.
Yes, so how about a round of applause for Mrs. Paul, not the fish stick queen.
I'm going into labor. No, now we're going to finish these wiring harnesses. I got to get this done. That's awesome. Next slide. I realized I could have put in like a really embarrassing slide here to embarrass you, Chuck. It would have been really funny.
Okay.
I should have thought about that.
Whatever.
This is the first game that shipped.
Yes, this is the very first game that shipped. This is prototype number 002.
Oh, is this Jurassic Park? Did you create a dinosaur out of DNA? Oh, that's just Brian Kelly.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. This was prototype number 002. There were technically 4 prototype games. The very first game we ever built is still sitting in Lawrence's Pub in Benton, Wisconsin, and it's 25 cents a game, and our village of 900 people bought it to keep it in town. That's how cool living in a small town in Wisconsin is.
Does it still earn money?
It still makes good money. At $0.25 a game, every kid in town knows where it is, and it's the only arcade device in the entire village.
That was the thing. We never really designed the game to like make money, because usually when they make a game, the idea is to make money. And for us, it was more about trying to make a deep game with rules that people would appreciate for home use. But by also making a fairly difficult game, it sucks quarters right out of your pocket.
And that game sitting there, this was before we had a box, and we had no idea how to even pack the damn thing up, so I just kind of...
No joke. We were troubleshooting the game still whilst they were taking off the legs and like packing it up. It was insane.
This went to Joe Newhart, who was like our one and only distributor on the East Coast. We shipped it to him, and it's his own personal game. He bought it, again, to help us out, and it was going to Allentown. I mean, and we literally were testing this thing as it's getting on the truck,
Yeah.
and the truck driver's standing there like, I got shit
Oh
to do
yeah,
here.
I actually gave him a tip. Did you know that? I gave him like $20 because he was so patient.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the secret thing about your company you didn't know. That guy was beyond patient.
The guy-
it'd be like shipping wars. It'd be like, I gotta get to Alabama.
If you listen to the podcast, you've heard us mention Heather, the hot accountant. The guy in the white shirt is her husband, Joel. Anything engineering that goes over my head, I give it to Joel. He's actually like an engineer for a company that does a lot of work for John Deere and stuff. And then Brian Kelly's a cranky old bastard that comes to town and drinks all my beer.
Next slide, please. And that's
There it
going
is.
on the truck.
Yep. There's the guy that Ben tipped.
Yeah, he's very patient. No, literally, they were. I was flashing the code as the game was like being put onto a pallet. It was ridiculous. It was like an Iron Man where he's trying to update the suit before the bad guys come. It was very much like that. Next slide, please. This is
Brian Kelly pointing at the truck. Lucky he wasn't flipping it off like he usually does.
and that's the first game going off on a truck.
And it was shortly thereafter I got a little emotional because I had a little over a year and a half of no employment behind me to get that thing on the truck. And I hugged Ben and he told me to never effing do that again.
That's right. Next slide, please. So then this is like, we did it, and then we're eating pie, and Dennis was there.
That's actually my mom. She's like our parts runner. She'll go pick up all our metal after it's been powder coated and stuff. Everything's done local to Benton, which is, again, middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. And yeah, just everybody helps. Nordman's an awesome guy. We're just blessed to even know him.
Oh, okay. Is there anything? Okay.
And Dennis says, "Hey Chuck, I ate your mom's pie." Maybe I shouldn't have told that joke.
Next slide, please. Oh yeah. And this was like he picked up the game, right? And
It's
put it
Scotty
right
from
as-
Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this in my van and take it home, sir.
So if you want to buy a game and pick it up from Spooky, you totally can. Next slide. What a mess.
Yeah, this was one of the early stages. You can literally see my my two kids in there. We print all the decals, everything in the big machine that's sitting here with the cords hanging over. It's a laminator. All the decals are real high-end, nice lamination so that they're not going to wear off when you're playing around the flipper buttons. But yeah, this is my kids just cutting apart decals, and you can see all the panels from the cabinets getting ready to be assembled. But this was kind of the cluster that we dealt with in the first early stages just to get organized.
Yeah, you always kind of remind me of a farmer with the kids. Like, oh, I've got some kids.
Yeah, free labor.
Hey, honey, we need to hire some more employees. Let's have another kid. Next slide. Oh, look at all those games.
Yeah, this is nice. This is right after we really started getting organized, and hauled a game over to Georgia Pacific, world famous packing company, crate guys, whatever. And they took a whole game, just came back like 2 weeks later and said, "Here you go." And these are the first real boxes. Games getting.
If you look at the back glass, we have the hot psychic. So I did something really, really stupid. So after Expo 2013, everyone hated our art, and I had to like quickly scramble to make new art. So I redesigned the cabinet, and I hired a guy to take our back glass, and it's the same layout. We just made it hand drawn, so people would like it more. But I'm like, you know what? If we're gonna do this, let's make some changes. Like all those ghost hunting shows, the psychic's always like a dumpy, crazy cat lady. And so I'm like, draw me a gypsy cat lover. And so he drew one, and he's like, And I got the feedback, is like, is this really what you want in your game? And I'm like, yeah, give me like a hot redhead Nicole Kidman instead. And there's a fun fact, if you look really, really closely in her crystal ball, it says 10K by Xmas as a reference to Pinside. So if you look, you can go on the floor and try to see that.
And if you look at her feet, just to the right, there's a black cat, and on the cat's tag it says "Bad Cat."
Yep.
As an homage to Python.
And all 6 of the tombstones the 6 tombstones are for the 6 ghosts that you fight. So like the woman of the night is like Molly Fitzpatrick, loved by many. There's like some references to their character. Next slide, please. This is your wife.
Yep, this is the wonderful KT. She's the co-host of the podcast and basically does all our inventory and bill paying and bookkeeping and everything that I do not have time to do, and thank God she's there.
And she can make really good cookies.
Yes, she can, and great French toast.
But in this photo, she's like,
because she has a full-time day job. We haven't quite absorbed her yet, but that is coming. And she's working full-time to keep us in health insurance and doing this about 35 to 40 hours a week.
Next slide.
Again, this was early days. We were getting a little more organized, but games still sitting on the floor, which is a horrible idea. You don't build them that way. That's god-awful. Next slide, quickly.
Oh, we're back where we started. So, that was quite the adventure through the times of the past, Chuck.
Sure, yeah.
So
that doesn't even scratch the surface.
What was your favorite part of designing this game?
Honestly, this weekend.
Why?
Because we're going to sell out.
I sold out years ago. Yeah.
That's when we set the number of 150 at Expo last year, we were so far away from that number that I thought, well, it'd be great if we ever got there. And I cannot tell you how cool this weekend has been. Off the charts. We came down here with just a tick over 100 sold, and right now I'm going back to Benton wondering if we're going to have any left to sell. Thank you.
In all honesty, yeah, the sales were really slow at first because it's an original title, so people have to play it to want it, and that's just the nature of the beast.
That's a true story. I mean, we're killing ourselves, and again, I quit my job. If we're going to make this work, I have to do this. When we opened up sales, after we had developed the game, after we had taken it to Expo, let people play it, we hadn't taken any money.
2 games, MGC and Expo 2013.
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't taken any money, so there wasn't that pre-order pool to sit there and take from. We opened up sales. The first month, we sold 1 game. And kind of wondered, where's everybody that said they want an original theme game? And it was scratching and clawing and fighting to get the games out there, get people to see it and play it, and it just slowly started to pick up a little bit over time.
What we learned was the best advertisement was to ship games and get them into people's homes.
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, look, this is real. I can play it. My friend bought one. They got one. I could get one. And yeah, it's the more we ship, the more we sell is basically what happens.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, literally at Expo 2014, I'll be completely straight-laced with you guys. We limited it to 150 to spur sales because everyone wants perception of limited availability, and it totally worked. And now we have to stick with it. So 150 is it.
Yes.
We could sell more than that, but we won't.
Right.
And it's like, man, we could make more money, but we have to stick with it.
There will be no orange edition.
Ectoplasm edition.
No, that's not going to happen. We said 150 and we meet.
I'm a ghost edition.
We're going to stay with it.
That's the thing. There is a game too that's being worked on that we won't tell you what it is, but we estimate that the run of 150 will be done early next year.
I'm hoping to have it done by Christmas, but that might be a little ambitious. So I'm going back to Benton and I'm hiring more people Monday. I can tell you that much after this weekend because we need.
It's the thing, when your money goes to Spooky Pinball, it doesn't go to.
It's going to employees who are going to sit down and build you a game.
It goes into your game.
Yeah.
Or I have given away a lot of spotted cow this weekend, so it goes into that too. But yeah, that's I completely forgot what we were talking about.
I don't know. Should we just do some questions?
Let's just finish up that last thought. So
what was that last thought?
We were talking about the availability of the game.
Okay.
So we're down to about 25 or less now.
Ish, yeah.
Yeah. But that was the thing. That will keep the people working until the next game is ready. So even if we did more games than that, which we won't, of America's Most Haunted, at a certain point you need to move on to the next title.
Yeah.
And the next title will be like what, 350?
We're going to do 300 units on the next game for sure.
Okay.
And it will be a license, and I can't tell you what it is just yet. So, and again, it was
It's
all
not
by design.
Twilight.
You know, to get to 150 was for us a huge achievement, and we went with the license because we do need to grow the company. This is my Gary Stern half a mile of wire line here. You have to build fast enough to keep the buyers happy, but at the same time, you can't build faster than you sell, or my people run out of work, and I don't want to be laying anybody off. We're trying to do everything as right as possible from the get-go in baby steps to build it up.
They could be built faster, but it's better to have quality control and keep the people employed until it's time for the next title.
Right, and building faster is not necessarily always better. You know, it's in our level, we have to keep them consistent. And when we first started, it was a game the first month, and then it was a game every couple of weeks. And right now, we're doing 2 to 3 a week. And when I get back, like I said, we're going to hire more. I just hired a full-time cabinet guy before I left. We're going to hire another person. We want to get to a game a day. So,
but that'll be for a future game where there's more.
That'll
volume.
be on the second game. So yeah, we'll kind of pace ourselves until we know for sure when the release is going to be on the second game and get these out.
Yeah,
as
I thought
as
having
possible.
the world's most realistic ghost boob physics would sell the game alone, but it turns out people want to play stuff and want to make a decision. But we're happy for everyone who's bought the game. We hope you enjoy it and tell your friends. Hey, I'm keeping close track of time. I always do this at shows. I hate when people run over. I hate that. So we have 17 minutes to take questions. We're 16.5.
You built, was it a Bill Paxton pinball machine early on?
I sure did.
How much is it really, like if someone wants to build their own pinball machine, how much, like is it not for manufacturing, but it's like a hobby?
A one-off?
Yeah, how much does something like that cost?
Are you asking how much would it cost for someone to do it, or how much would it cost for me to do it for someone? The parts are not a huge deal. Like when I did the Bill Paxton game, I made it out of garbage. I turned garbage into garbage. It was amazing, like alchemy. I guess that's not really moving in the periodic table, is it? I probably spent $1,500 making that game. It was like Craigslist parts, whatever. If you were to get like all brand new things from Pinball Life, again, a game has a certain cost, a couple $1,000s. Yeah, and then you could put a P-Rock in and get the system going. So, yeah, the real cost is time.
Just a quick question. I got to play the game on the floor and really enjoyed it. Like how fast the game is. Wasn't expecting that at all. Just coming into it, seeing it on the forums. Love how fast it is. But code-wise, is that kind of where it is complete, or are there going to be more additions to it, or bug fixes, or what do you see on the code?
Well, obviously Ben will squash any bugs we find, and we still do find an occasional bug, but I'm going to beg him not to add any more code to it, because as it is now, nobody's ever going to get to wizard mode, so.
We did ship with a working wizard mode, I will say that, and that was almost a year ago. What we've added since are more prompts like, do this, like, better information, better prompts, like, here's your progress. Basically, things that tell the player what to do. We have found bugs along the way, and then there was something in tournament mode we found too.
Yeah, because obviously when you throw a game into a tournament, which we had never done before, and thank God for Ed here at Texas Pinball Festival for giving us the opportunity to do that, we immediately started going, okay, well, there's going to be some great players on this game. What if they get to the demon battle?
Yeah.
What happens if they do it twice? And Ben's like, I don't know.
No, we actually tested. We tested, like, we took the glass off. And it's like, because we found a bug, like you could beat the game, and then what was it? One of the modes you couldn't restart. You couldn't restart
properly. 2 of the modes. The Dennis Nordman Doctor mode, you couldn't restart it, and this was things we had to think about.
Yeah, you have to test things that would basically never happen, but they could.
Yes.
It's insane. Like I mentioned, it's the 80. I don't even think 80-20 rule. It's like, I would say this programming, I would go with 90%. It's insane how much programming it takes for a game. And it's not even programming. I would say, like, I do the programming for free. You pay me to troubleshoot. That's the real trouble, because you've got game logic on top of random mechanical ball action, and you have to think of every possible thing that might happen or stack or happen concurrently and account for that.
Did you ever have the idea of forming a pinball company before you hooked up with Ben and saw Ghost Squad, or was it all inspired by Ghost Squad?
I think most people know. My old job, we were a vendor for the Wizard of Oz, and it was my process on the play fields that we had developed basically for Godzilla, just refined. And then I came up with the idea for, hey, let's direct print the cabinet too. We can see how far we can take this. And thank goodness Jack was willing to go along with it, and I think it came out pretty amazing. But at the same time, I was being asked by basically all the small companies that were up and coming at the time, and Predator announced before us, and John, and they were asking me to help them do things, but I couldn't do any of it, and Ben included. I was kind of secretly helping him on the weekends, so to speak, and the Lost Playfield honestly was a print test for the Wizard of Oz. That's why we did it. And spoiler warning, yeah. So we did the Lost Playfield and showed it to Jack.
Oh, it was beautiful. Too bad the game sucked.
But that's
Lost.
But and those things kind of kept just piling up. And working in pinball at that capacity was fine. It was very exciting. It was way better than making warning labels for a John Deere tractor for the 18 millionth time. And Ben. We joke all the time that Ben made me quit my job.
You joke all the time about that.
Ben is like, no, what are you, stupid? We'll just do this nights week. And I'm like, it's never going to get done if I do that. So I basically sat by myself in that shop that you saw the cabinet sitting in for a year doing nothing.
Crying.
But engineering Ben's game and getting it ready for sale. But at that point, Ben was, I think we could sell a few of these. And we really didn't know if it was going to work, if people were going to buy it or anything else.
And it was further along than your zombie game.
Yeah, and I had just started kind of making the whitewood for the Pinball Zombie game that I was working on. But he was so much farther ahead of me, and I have a lot of faith in Ben Heckendorn, let's put it that way. And I knew he wasn't going to stop until it was done. I knew I can count on him and he can count on me. The rest of life is kind of a mystery. We work well together.
Although he should really rip up the carpet in his shop.
And you should put foam behind your
I'm going to go in there with a big knife and just rip it all up one knife. He's going to come in the next day. No, my precious carpet that I like for some reason.
See, these are inside jokes that nobody's understanding.
Oh, you're right. You'd understand if they're... Did
Charlie,
you give the microphone to Brian?
Can you explain to people where the metropolis of Benton, Wisconsin is? And if for some reason I happen to be in the area, would I be able to stop by Spooky Pinball World headquarters and see how things operate there?
You absolutely...
I would love to sometime.
Well, yeah, Brian, sure. You sometime, like last Tuesday, just stop in. Brian sleeps on the couch more than I do because Katie doesn't get mad at me too often. But yeah, we're at 244 Ridge Avenue in Benton, Wisconsin. We are a real facility. It's like 2,000 square feet. It's not that big. We're incredibly efficient with what we have. But it's a real thing. Benton literally is a village of 900 people, basically close to Dubuque and Madison. It's about an hour south of Madison. It's 15 miles from, or 15
They have really good
Dubuque,
pizza at the bar, though.
We have one great restaurant in town, and that's all there is.
The cheese is like this thick, and if you try to order extra cheese in the pizza, they won't let you.
Yes. And if you knock on any door in Benton and say, I can't find the shop, and they'll be like, oh, you mean the pinball guy? Yeah, you'll find me, trust me. It's not hard.
I should have asked this when I played the game, but what back ends the game? What kind of system is this? Is this embedded architecture, or are you running Linux on a PC, or what back ends the game?
It's sort of evolved from the Bill Paxton pinball game. Not much is left. It's how you might see a bird, and maybe its toenail came from a dinosaur. It's basically a custom system that we did. It uses 2 microcontrollers. There's no computer in it. It uses a PIC32 that does the main game code and logic, and there's a coprocessor that does the audio and video. So basically it has 2 80 megahertz microcontrollers in it, and there's one board that does everything. I don't really believe in putting PCs in pinball machines. I'm just against it. I mean, I don't care if people do it, but it's not for me.
And all the boards are manufactured in Texas by that guy right there, Parker Dillman at Macrofab. Another good friend and big part of the reason we're here. It's all team effort. It's all friends, man. That's all we are.
Got 8 minutes.
next game that you can't tell us about yet.
Yes.
Can you at least tell us if the theme is a scary, spooky theme also?
Dennis Nordman said to me one time, "Hey Charlie, if you call the company Spooky Pinball, people are going to think all your games are going to be spooky." And I said, "What's your point, Dennis?"
All right then.
I eat, sleep, and breathe spooky stuff. I love old horror movies and sci-fi and weirdness, and it's going to be definitely not as humorous as Ben's game, which I love humor in pinball, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a little bit more of a badass horror game.
We can
Something I don't think that has really been done in a long time.
We will guarantee the art will be a lot better than America's Most
dear
Haunted.
Mother of God, yes.
No question about that.
There's like a professional artist involved that is very well known, and I can't say who he is because
will be
it'll
happy
trace back things quickly. All things that were made available, by the way, by you people buying America's Most Haunted and us rolling it back into the company instead of our pockets.
I put it right into my pocket. I don't know about you.
Well, you do. You can, but I don't.
Oh, we got one more. Yeah.
So not to beat this to death, but Ben mentioned an Iron Man reference. So I know you've seen the movie.
I love Iron Man.
And at the very end of the first movie, they're having the press conference, and they're like, "Oh, Stark Industries is involved with Iron Man. What do you know about Iron Man?" And he's like, "All right, I'm Iron Man."
Yeah.
This is your chance for that moment. Just tell us what the game is.
You know, funny story. My son, Bug, 12-year-old, works in the shop helping build wiring harnesses and cutting decals apart. He goes, "You know what? Ben Heck is a lot like Tony Stark, except for he doesn't get any women."
It's true. The new theme is pretty cool. The art will be fantastic, and I think it will fill the void of horror and blood that people have been asking for in pinball.
Thank you for not revealing everything.
It was very difficult because I know what it is, of course.
His nickname is Benjamin Snowden Heckendorn, so.
I got to go to Russia now.
Do you have a price point in mind for the second game?
The second game will be $59.95. I do not want to cross that $6,000 mark for any reason ever if I can avoid it at all costs.
Even if it's adding better LEDs in Ghost Squad and America's Most Haunted?
Yes.
He should have a better LED option.
Call CoinTaker. They have a wonderful package that you can buy.
Okay.
This is a long-running.
I think $6,000 is like a psychological barrier, and we can actually, even with a license, we can still make the same amount of profit at that price point. So we're going to stick with it. A lot of people were kind of, when we first announced original theme game at $6,000, they thought we were crazy and it was a little high, but
the market has shifted.
Yeah, the market shifted.
We're the affordable company now.
Yeah, but we built the game and we figured out what the profit margin had to be, and then we set it to that, and that allows us to continue making games.
And we have hired a programmer now too, so Ben's brain doesn't melt, essentially.
Now I don't do anything.
Ben is going to be a director and dots guy on my game, so he's going to be directing the code and helping where needed, and doing all the dots. So,
yes,
we're not letting him get away.
But that was going to be my next question, but I think you just answered it. Where you did so much on this game, were you going to be just as involved in the next one, or are you going to step back?
Literally, for my sanity, I can't be as involved for the next one because I did a lot of things. Yeah, Chuck did all the manufacturing, but all the creative stuff in the dots and programming I did on America's Most Haunted, and it was a real slog. And I used my, what I call it, the superpower of not being married to have the time to do it. But yeah, it's pretty tough. So I need to take a little bit of a breather and step back and let someone else take the reins. But I might make another game someday, like a Ben game.
I've told Ben for years, when we get to game number 3, when and if that happens, I want to build a game with him.
Chuck, what is game number 3? Tell us now.
I can't say what number 2 is. I'm sure as hell not going to work. No, but I would love to. I think Ben and I are potentially maybe the only 2 people on this planet that could design a game together and not murder each other.
Yet. All right.
Will you be exporting to more countries, like the UK, for example?
You asked me that a couple of days ago. Yes.
I thought everyone else might like to know.
I promised that we would get some games to Australia, and we will do that. That's going to be the next border that we cross. We have gone to Canada. Sadly, the UK, France, and Great Britain, the demand just really hasn't been there, and it's a lot more difficult to get games into Europe than it is anywhere else. Every country has its own standards and codes and everything that we have to get up. I mean, it's not a matter of power supplies or any of that stuff. We designed it from day one to be RoHS lead-free and have the power's easily switchable. That's not a problem whatsoever. We do have 3 games going to Germany. I won't say exactly how, but a wealthy individual wanted 3 of them for 3 of his businesses. One was in LA, one was in Germany, and one was in South America. He bought all 3 of them, shipped them to California, and then we'll ship them wherever the hell he wants. So it is possible. I just don't know how to do it yet.
On a future game with larger volume, we should be able to look into those problems.
Hoping on the second game we can absolutely cross
150 games it's a pretty small number. And pretty much you have to make 100 of anything to make it even worth your time, and 150 is barely beyond that. But hopefully as the company grows, we can scale to meet the demands of a global market.
Yes.
Nice corporate speak there.
That sounded
like that?
very professional.
The synergistic energies that combine into the cloud computing form factor will work in this space. ROM.
Okay, my question is, since you're a startup company, are we going to see you on a future episode of Shark Tank?
No way, they take like 5%.
No, quite honestly,
you're fired.
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. I'm still driving the same car. I still live in the same house. I don't spend a lot of money. It all goes right back into the company, but we're okay. We're going to go home and we're going to hire more and create a few more jobs and just keep building it slowly.
Thank you. Thank you.